Welcome back. We are talking about business continuity management systems in the banking sector of Saudi Arabia with Khaled Altawily. Khaled, thanks so much for the first segment there. Lots of talk about risk, which, as I said, I'm doing a lot of work with right now. I'd like to kind of talk about where risk and business continuity management and some of the controls overlap. Because I don't know about you, but I've always run into instances where you're talking with a risk person and, it's like, hey, that's my area, and business continuity, no, that's my area. So can we talk about the overlap between the two?
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is an interesting piece because always I feel that I'm wearing multiple hats as as a business continuity professional, as auditor sometimes, as a risk professional, and sometimes as a compliance, and sometimes as a governance. The way that we manage the business continuity management system, we look at it as a multiple programs inside each program. It have multiple tasks. So we take the governance piece to look at the policy, the procedures related to the business continuity department and the organization as well. And inside this program, we look at the committee, the charter related to the committee, how we prepare the agenda, how we prepare the meeting, how we conduct the meeting, how we conduct after the meeting the minutes, and how we track the actions taken by the members. All of that within the governance program. We look to another program called the life cycle, where we conduct the BIA and the threat assessment and the BCP. Another program called the validation, where we conduct multiple type of tests, including the tabletop exercises and the simulations and the drills, and go on. So we have another program for the training and awareness to target multiple type of audience, starting from the board of directors and going to the C-level, to the business continuity professional, the risk champions, and even we go sometimes extra miles to the key vendors outside of the organizations. And we do have also the periodic document review and the vendor continuity management program, which is a very complex program by itself. So a lot of times we try to evaluate the business continuity capability of the key service provider that we are dealing with. And to do that, we need to interview them, have a look at their policy if they have, their business continuity plan, the latest test results they have. So all of this, you find yourself wearing the audit hat sometimes to evaluate, or wearing the compliance hat to ensure that people are measuring, complying with your requirements. Sometimes you wear the risk hat to ensure that mitigation controls in place and whatever gaps found during the program is addressed in a way or in another. So this is the overlap that I see from my point of view and from my experience during the last couple of years.
I'm curious with that overlap, because business continuity will do exercises. You mentioned that, and tests, but you'll have other groups who want to do tests, and I guess the easiest one to say is ITDRP, disaster recovery, right? That's the easiest one to pull out, and they're doing their set of tests. So how do you address if groups are doing their own thing? And how do you bring them together then? I know that we already talked about terminology, but if you're doing tabletop tests with business groups and you're talking about BIA findings and walkthroughs and things like that, and IT's going off and doing their own thing, how do you bring them together?
Usually in the beginning of the year, we design a comprehensive test program, and we plan what we are going to conduct this year, having multiple type of tests. So having one of the disaster recovery tests, we usually play 3 different roles. We are facilitator, and we are observer, and we are one of the line business, which going to test and validate the things related to our area. So as a facilitator, we sit with the information technology people at the beginning of the exercise, before the exercise, to agree on the template and the test plan itself. What we are going to test, what would be the pass or fail criteria, what is the scope, what is the scope exclusion, and who are participating. And then while conducting the test, we ensure that people are utilizing the business continuity plan, the DRP, the run book, and the other documents related to the test or no. Are they attending? Are they achieving? Is there any manipulation in any way? And then after the test, we ensure to update the test results in a fair way to ensure that whatever is achieved and whatever is business demanding, both are captured in the report. And if there is any gaps, how we address that gap and how we retest the failure in case there is a failure. And all of this, the report at the end, it will go to the relevant committee and to the board of director to communicate the results and communicate the efforts made by the entire group.
You mentioned external controls and validating them. How do you go about doing that? Because risk management, enterprise risk management, tends to do that with their partners. Procurement or supply chain management groups do that as well. Business continuity wants to do that as well to make sure it's on place. So is it a good idea to have one set of defined controls in place that everyone follows? Otherwise, using yourself and myself as an example, your company could be sending 3-4 different people to come and talk to me about the exact same thing. And guess what? I'm going to get frustrated. And I may not provide you all that information anyway. How do you deal with that kind of thing, with same groups doing the same thing? How do you keep everyone following the same controls?
We need to understand our role exactly. So I guess integrating the BCM, if we want to integrating the BCM with the business as usual work, we need to have a clear workflow system to define what is exactly I'm looking at it. So let's take example, the procurement and what they are doing. When they sign an agreement with any service provider, they will do whatever they want to do or whatever is required from them to do. But for me, in the business continuity, I'm going to look at the BCM clauses, the legal clauses that should be part of the contract. I need to ensure that RTO, RPO is captured. I need to ensure that escalation process and clear contact details is there. And I need to assess the capability of the service provider. Does he have a business continuity plan in place or no? And that would be my part only. Other departments will look at it from their point of view. Information security will evaluate if that service provider provide a cloud services. Compliance is going to see if they have, if they are under the umbrella of the central bank. The risk management will look at it from financial risk, market risk, and the other type of risk they do. So having this workflow will identify clearly what is my role in this chain.
This information, all this information that you captured, should you keep it in a central location? Because from an enterprise perspective, and if you're looking at an external party, we're all looking, we have our own roles. We're all looking at our own little pieces, but then we may be logging it in different places so that it looks completely disjointed. How do you track all of that to keep it to make sense and comprehensive?
Do you mean track it in terms of policy and procedure, or track it in terms of implementation?
Track it in by means of logging all the information in a central location database, that kind of tracking. that everyone can access?
I have never seen that. Maybe we are not yet there. However, if I take it from policy and procedure perspective, I'm ensuring that procurement have in their policy something referring to my policy, and I have in my policy something referring for my
Good
piece
point.
in their policy.
That's a good
And
point.
yeah, and taking this example, the vendor continuity management, I have my own record. So whatever identified through the BIA as a key service provider, I must ensure that in my record, I have a copy of the SLA, the agreement, their BCP, their test results, and the risk evaluation that I conducted. So we utilize, Excel and whatever workflow or tracking systems available to facilitate such work.
Yeah, I was just thinking of some groups, and I've experienced it, where groups are going off and doing their own thing, even though they're supposed to be quote unquote linked and dependent on each other, but they're doing either the same thing or completely different things. And they're saying that we have gaps over here, we have gaps over there. But if they had reached out and talked to other groups, kind of like what you said in the first segment, they have all that information. So I was just wondering if where's a good idea to keep all that information so that each group can go to it and say, oh yeah, there it is. That's the piece I was looking for, or I want to make sure it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. There should be a father for every every piece of work, and he would have the repository for everything. But when it comes to a small detail related to a specific another area, like the BCM, he will approach me and I'll support him with that piece of information. If I depends on the procurement to evaluate the business continuity capability of a service provider, he wouldn't be able to do that. Even in my team, not everyone in my team is conducting such assessment. Only the certified auditor or the certified lead auditor, ISO 22301, is conducting such assessment.
Yeah, and then at least that way we can, to your point, with that whole flow, you can check, yes, the group that comes before me, they've done their stuff. That's the information I need. I can do mine. Now the group that comes after me can look back and say, yeah, procurement and BCM did their stuff. We have all the controls in place now, where we need to. Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question, because you just mentioned ISO 22301. In the banking realm in Saudi Arabia, do you follow any specific guidelines or standards? Do they get adopted?
Well, I'm not sure if you will be surprised, but business continuity is existing in Saudi Arabia nearly since 2001. The central bank may be one of the first governmental bodies which mandating having a business continuity arrangement related to the online banking. And then in 2017, the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia, they developed a framework. That framework have 13 different domains with a total of 75 controls, talking about the controls related to the governance, to the policy, to the BIA, to the disaster recovery, to the crisis management, to even the third party and auditing the program. Now, after COVID, I have seen more than 50 different government bodies starting developing a framework. I was one of the reviewers.
A different framework, a new framework?
Yes, we don't have a standard. Yes. So comparing, let's say, to the UAE or the Emirates country, Emirates, Dubai. So in UAE, they have a national standard for business continuity that called NCMA, and it was developed in 2015 or 14. But yet in Saudi Arabia, we don't have a standard on national level. But let's say every ministry or every government body, they develop their own requirements and they develop their own framework. I believe there is a cooperation between multiple government body to have a national standard. We may see it in the next couple of years. I hope so.
Yeah, that would get confusing if everybody's following different guidelines. Of course, I would assume there are similarities, of course.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if everyone was following their own, and yet they're all government or all banking institutions. It would make more sense to follow a standard.
Yeah, that's true. But luckily, most of them is following the ISO 22301. And they are adding their touches and their requirements to their document.
That was going to be my next question. If they were looking at something like Disaster Recovery Institute's professional practices or ISO 22301 or some of the other ones that are out there, if they were using something as a base, and I guess the ISO standard is the base to help develop these
Absolutely. Ones. Yes, absolutely. And they, taking an example, the central bank and the framework developed by them, they utilize the ISO 22301 as well as DRI and BCI, the GBG, and multiple standards from the best practices.
Oh. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of our second segment. We are talking about business continuity management systems in the banking sector of Saudi Arabia with Khaled Altawily, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.